How's the sound? Apparently Restream is having issues displaying if people are in the chat, so I might be talking to nobody. That's better. Apparently Restream keeps telling me I have 0 people in here. That's super weird. So, how's the sound? We'll be getting started in a couple of seconds. Hopefully, this new Restream chat works. But I'm keeping both chats open so I can see what's going on. But we'll be talking about the Octopus and Octopus Pro mostly tonight. There's like 2 issues I want to cover. So let's get to it. So we have the Octopus right here. We have the Pro right here. So apparently there were some issues that I ran into that made me concerned, and I'm going to see if I can troubleshoot them live, but I wanted you to see this. So I have a display, and I have the Octopus Pro board, And I tried to set up the display the other night to check something, and it wasn't functioning correctly on the Octopus Pro. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to try it on the Octopus Pro, which is actually this one, and we'll see what happens. So it's really simple what I'm going to do. I'm just going to load the firmware so I can set it up for the display. So I'm going to go over to my desktop here for a second. And on my desktop, we need to find the Octopus Pro because that's not the same set of directions. We're going to go to repository, and then we're going to search on Octopus, if I can spell it correctly. And here's the Pro. And so as you can see in here, we have the actual manual. Now this is helpful, but at this point I'm more interested in the pins. So I mean, we can shuffle through this and see if we can find something, but I don't think we are going to find anything of use. So I'll show you the quicker method. You go to hardware, then go to the pins, and inside here you'll see where the TFT display is, and you'll see the pinouts. So it's actually located right here. It says TFT, and then you have 5 volts ground. Then you have a couple of digital pins for TX and RX and reset. So these are outlined right here. You just can't see them on the board. So I'll flip back over the board so you can see. So on the board, we have this right here, which is the actual display that I'm going to use today. And we're going to look for the RS232 and connect in our full plug right here. So now that we've got that done, I've traced out the cables, and I know this is the reset pin. So if they're side by side like so, then you know this is reset. So we know reset's at the bottom, so I'm going to flip this over and I'm going to insert it down in here. So it's easiest to do the top 5 or 4 pins first, then the reset. And then all we want to do is see if we can power it up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the 5 volts from the power supply and plug it in. And as you can see, it's now powering up. Now apparently last night I was having trouble with it powering up, but that's okay. So I'll show you how to troubleshoot this. Let me just verify on the other board that I don't have them backwards. So I'm going to take this and move it over here for a second and try the same operation on this board, which is actually the Octopus version 1.1, which you can tell by the writing right here. So originally what I was going to show you was an issue that I ran into, but now I got to check the pinouts on this because originally this was not being powered. So we'll find out what's going on. So if we go back over to the desktop for a second, and we go back, we're going to have to check real quick to see what the settings are for the Octopus version 1.0, which is 1.1 as well. And we'll click on here, we'll get the pins, and then down here the pins have moved between versions. So you see resets on top, and then you have your 5 volts on bottom, and the pinouts for that are located in J70, which is right over in here. So you can see what the pins are. Now normally the ground I thought had squares, but I could be wrong about that. But we know where 5 volts is, so let's go back over to the board. And on the board, we're going to do the exact same thing, except we're going to realize that reset's on top. So you got reset pin, and then you've got your regular pins down here. So we're going to find it over in here, plug in like so, and then plug in the reset. And it's probably both going to work correctly. I don't know what was happening last night, but that's interesting. And it powers up. So we know it's working for both right now. But I'm going to show you another way to troubleshoot this, because that's what I was originally going to do. So I'm going to bring this over. And what was basically bothering me about this was I couldn't get power to this display. So let's try hooking it up again. Maybe there's something about the cable I shook loose. But let's see, I think the reset pin's on the bottom. So I'll plug this in and I'll plug this in just so you can see. We'll double check it to make sure it's working, and then I'll show you how to troubleshoot it. So it does power up today. Apparently yesterday I must have been seeing things. So let's power this down for a second and we'll look at ways that this could occur. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some jumper wires on here and take out a multimeter. We know that the actual voltage is located right here. So we're going to plug into that pin, and I'm going to tack this down with a little bit of putty just so that we can look at it. So I'll take out a multimeter in just a second. Actually, this might be the cable that was giving me trouble last night. And that might be the issue. But let's get this multimeter going here. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the pin. In order to do that, we need to use the ground. So let me see if I can get this in a good position so you can actually see what I'm doing. So here's the multimeter. I'm going to put it on voltage right here. So there's going to be a little bit of current running through there, probably from the air, which is kind of weird. But you can zero it if you want. You can touch them together, check it. Or you can check continuity by putting it here and touching it together. And you can also hear a dinging noise, I believe. Let me see if I can get this set up right. Okay, that's continuity. So if you touch here and you touch the actual wire at the other end, that's continuity. So I'll show you on a wire so you can see what I'm talking about. It's not going to be relevant in this situation, but there will be other situations where you'll need to use it. So I've got to lock this in place a little. Hopefully not slide it where it can't be seen. I'm going to put one probe here and the other right here. So that's continuity, meaning that the wire is continuous and there's no breaks. That's what I just gave away as continuity, is if it doesn't beep, there's a break in the wire. But in this case, we're going to use voltage. So in order to do this, I actually have to energize the system. Now, just so you know, the outer shell here is ground, and this is going to be the voltage pin. So that's how we're going to measure. So we're going to energize it like so. Then I'm going to stick the first probe over in here, and the other one right here. We're going to try and get a read, if I can do it correctly. So you can see it's 4.73 volts. So that was my original concern, is checking that pin. Last night I didn't bother to do it because I thought it was going to be a good tutorial. So we're going to try this with the other cable that I think is a suspect cable, and I just got them reversed. So let me move this over for a second and power down the system. What I was actually going to show you is how to jump these pins. So I was going to actually put jumper cables in here, but it looks like it's not necessary now. So I'm going to plug into here, and I'm going to plug in the reset right here. And we can test the cable one of two ways. First way that I showed you just a second ago was continuity. So if we put this here, and then we put this one down here, which I've got to find some more putty to get this to work better. So let me put this here, and I'll take this one and put it here. Now I'll set it to continuity so you can see what's going on. And essentially, if there's a crack in the wire, we can pick that out, or if it's not aligned. So these are going to probably be on the either end. It might be this is reset. But let's check this one first, and this one. So there's continuity there. So we can go the next one over. So there's something strange going on here. That's because I'm not got the probe on it. So let's try this one. So that one's working. Now the next one over. So that's working. Now the reset pin. And this is a good way to check issues like with your BL Touch. If it stops operating when you put it in short, meaning that you put the short cable in and then you put the extender cable on, you might see continuity issues, because I've seen at least 3 times now with users that there's an actual issue with continuity where you have to splice the wires together for your BL Touch. But seeing how that's not an issue now, I'm not going to have to show you how to jump to an alternate voltage pin, which I would use from the pinout diagram to find an unused 5-volt pin and then jump it to the display, because I thought the 5-volt pin was bad. So we're going to skip that and we're going to do other things. So I might not be totally prepared, but I got a couple other things planned. So for this, I've got to double check this again, but I believe it's up here and here for the reset pin, and it's backwards on the other board. So let me clean up my workbench a little here, and I'll check on the chat in just a second, because I know there's probably several comments already. Okay, so let me move this over so you can see it hopefully better. So this is just a generic display that I bought years ago. It's got a SD card reader right here, and then it's got several different ports you can jump into. You can actually run SWD on this and load firmware a different way, but it's best to do it through the actual SD card. Then it also has power down here, and then it has a couple of ports that are auxiliary for other things. I really like this board, I just haven't had a lot of time to play with it. But you can see that there's like an encoder that you can hook up here, and then there's UART, and then I guess a couple of these are going to be actually used for end-stop sensors. But it's kind of hard to pick out because they were really bad on their silk screen and didn't really break everything down initially. They may have fixed the actual manual. So I'm going to flip this back over and I'm going to plug this in so we can check the power. And it looks like we have a power issue again. So the question is, how did I create that? So maybe there's something going on here, or I plugged it in backwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this out and double check my work. It could be I also didn't mount it correctly in the pins. So I'm going to go over to the desktop for a second. And we're looking at the Octopus, and the actual board that we want to look at is the Octopus Pro. So what I need to do is go back, click on Big Tree, Repositories, type in Octo, and that'll bring us the Pro. Then we'll go to Hardware and go to Pins. And hopefully I don't have this backwards. So it says 5 volts, ground, then there's a transmit pin, a receive pin, then a reset pin. So they're all over in here, which is J70 again. So I guess they did the same thing between the two boards. So let's go back over to the workbench, and hopefully I can plug this in right. So I'm going to take this cable, I'm going to plug it in nice and snug. Then I'm going to plug in this reset cable right here and see if it powers. So apparently it's not working all of a sudden, so maybe I get a chance to actually show you. But let's check on the back of here, because maybe this is the issue. So there's some kind of issue occurring on this cable. So I'm just going to pull the cable and put in the other one. So there might be a loose connection in the cable or something. So let's do this. I'm going to power this down. Then I'm going to plug these in. Of course, I can't get the reset cable in. And if it happens again, then I'll show you the other way to do this. Or at least the way I think it works. But apparently that fixed the issue, so there's something wrong with my other cable. Granted, I know you don't have two cables, and the situation is probably a bad connection between here on the actual cable, but that's what I was experiencing last night. So I wanted to talk about doing updates, because a lot of people seem to, well, I don't have a lot of tutorials up there that are modern for the actual doing of this, so I'm trying to find the actual version, which is probably under settings, info. So my version is TFT 35 v2.0.25, and it looks like it was January 11th of last year. So we do need to upgrade that. So I need to grab an SD card, and any size will do, I think. I might be using one that's too large, but I just bought some new ones, so I got a 32 gigabit, and I wanted to try it out. Normally I use 8 gigabit. So let's pop this open. So this is actually a solid card in this case. And I'm going to put it in my card reader, which is over here, and place this in my computer. And hopefully it'll read it. Otherwise I'll have to go get a different card reader. I may have put it in backwards, but we'll find out. There we go. So on my computer, first thing I'll do is I'll actually check the chat. Give me a second to pull that up here. Okay, let's see what we got here. I'm here waiting. Yep, I'm online, Marcelo. Let's see, the Octopus issue. My Octopus issues 2, the connection to the Octopus will be interrupted after a few moments. Switch the cable, now it works, no longer, but I still get the disconnects. Yeah, so that may be the possible issue. I wish they made the cables better, but unfortunately I have zero control over it because I don't work there. Let's see, the reset pin on the cable end will have to open out or be opened out. Okay. And then 2020 is not last year. Yes, you're right. It's 2 years ago. Sorry. I'll wake up in a minute. I haven't had coffee since I started yet, so I probably will make mistakes. So let's go over and check on how to do the software update. So on the computer, we're going to go back and we're going to go to Big Tree Tech. And down here you can see Big Tree Tech touchscreen firmware. So we'll just click on that. And what it is a GitHub. So you can see that there's a bunch of stuff in here. Talks about certain displays, but hopefully it'll have different ones because there's this one folder that says copy to the root directory. And inside here it talks about different displays, and as you can see there's a V1, V2, V3, V3, V1, and so on and so forth through here. That gives away which display it is, and this is the size of the display. So that's kind of important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over here, I'm going to click code, and I'm going to do download zip because we don't have GitHub on this machine at the moment. So it's going to pull down a zip file of all the information that we see right here. So to make that go away, you can just click on the code button. Once this is downloaded, what you'll notice is it's kind of large. This might be upwards of 100 megabits, but I doubt it because it just opened up. So it's about 60. So I'm going to go over to the folder and let you see it. It's currently in a zip folder, so you need to extract it. So one way to do that is to copy it to your downloads folder like so. That's one technique. The other one is you could go back to your downloads and you can right click on it and then extract all. But that's another technique. That's a shortcut that I thought I'd show you. So this should pretty soon be done. You can watch down here and see the bar moving along, or you can pull this up. That's the advantage to Windows 10. But we do have to go back over to the desktop to figure out which display I have, because this is an old one. So what I'm going to do is go over to the workbench while this is going on. And as you can see, we have the display here, and it says TFT v2.0. Now obviously the encoder is not attached on this one because it would be apparently some pinouts over here or some kind of connection. So we're going to go back over to the computer and see if we can find that one and set up the drive. So if I'm back over on the computer, we do have the F drive over here and it's got nothing on it. Let's check to see what the formatting is. Maybe we can see it in properties. So it says FAT32. That sounds like it works quite well. And FAT means File Access Table, and it's 32-bit. So whenever you see FAT, it probably means 16-bit or 8-bit, probably 16. I can't remember because it's been so long, but this is actually just defining how files are laid out in a table so they can be accessed. So file access table. Anyways, now that that's all set, let's go back over to the downloads folder. And we're going to go into this folder and we're going to find our display. So to do this, it says copy to SD card root directory to update. So I'm going to go over to here. I'm going to say send to and send it to the actual root of the F drive. So it's going to take a few seconds. This is where all the information is. If you haven't seen before, it actually has a platform io.ini, which means that you can open up the actual source code in platform IO inside VS Code, as long as you have the plugin. So I'll check on the chat while I'm waiting for that to come up. Let's see. Can a faulty cable that is connected to the PC that has Octoprint and the Octoprint trigger M112 errors? I'll have to look that in a moment because I'm not sure off the top of my head what 112 is, but we can actually look at that real quick. So if I bring up a browser, so over here we can go over to the actual Marlin. There's actually the help G codes, and we can say all. We can find M112, which is emergency stop. And so the description of this is used for emergency stopping. M112 shuts down the machine, turns off all steppers and heaters, and if possible, turns off the power supply. A reset is required to return to normal operation. So that's just one of those things that they talk about when it comes to the actual printer. This is a G code you can send while it's printing to stop everything. It could also be inside your file. So it's a good idea to know this, but most of the time you're not going to use it. It's used for an automated script for if the power goes out, it'll shut everything down, or if there's an overheat situation such as runaway heating or thermal runaway, this will execute automatically for you as long as you have not manipulated the Marlin firmware. And when I say that, I'm saying don't manipulate it because you don't want to burn your house down, so leave it alone. But that's what the functionality is for that. So let's go back over here, and essentially we've copied this to the root. So I'm going to click over here, and now it gets a little weird because I kind of know the directions sometimes, but I'm going to copy unified menu theme to the root, which is going to be actually over here. So that's already done. Now I got to find the display, which is version 2, and it's a 35. So I'm going to right click. This is actually the firmware. So I'm going to send this to the drive. So we've got that set. Now there might be a config.ini, which I've showed you guys a couple times, but there's settings in here that might be useful. And then there's going to be something like a language pack. And this has to do with which language you want to display on your display. So in this case, I'm going to do English, but obviously you can see that there's Espanol, Francais, Deutsch, Hungarian, I think, Italian, Japanese, New Zealand or Netherlands, NL. Sorry, I always get that wrong. Polish. PT is Portuguese, I think. RU is Russian. SK, I'm not sure of. SL might be Slavic. TC, I'd have to think about. TR is Turkish, I think. And then UK is UK English, maybe. I could be a language other than that. And then, of course, BR. Haven't got a clue. AM is Armenian, so I'm gonna open this up so you can see it. So it's actually Brazil Portuguese. So there is a cheat sheet inside the file, so we can double check to see if I know or don't know what I'm talking about. So let's try this one right here. So I'm going to wander around for a second and try and see if I can find it. Apparently I'm not reading fast. Huh. Maybe they didn't put it in the file. Well, let's try a different one. CA. This might be Chinese. Doesn't look like it. Catalina. So it's, I think, close to Italy. CN is Chinese, probably. I love how they do this evenly between each file. But you can create your own languages just by populating like here. Unfortunately, I can't pick out all the languages, but I'm pretty sure it's Chinese. Then let's see if this is another flavor of Chinese. Probably not. It's a European language of some type, but apparently I don't know it off the top of my head. So, oh, it's Czech. CZ, probably. Traditional Chinese, pardon me. So yeah, you can see that they're kind of leaving a clue in some of these. DE, I obviously know that's Deutschland or German. But they don't seem to give more than they did in the other files, which someone could probably fix that in their display. But anyways, I've been digressing here. I'm going to send this over to the drive. And the reason being is, I'll show you in a minute, because I've covered this before. When this loads, it's going to need a theme. It's going to need the actual bin file, which is the firmware that will be converted to a current file. Then it has your INI, which is your configuration. So you're going to open this in Notepad++. I'll bring this over so you can see. Inside here, they have supported variants, but there's other settings that you can set. Obviously, there's serial port settings that you can set here for different things that you want to use. make sure they don't conflict. You know how P1 says 6. So if you go to P1, it says printer. So that's the 3D printer board probably. And then you have 0 for disable. And then over here, you have the baud rate, which is 115/200. Normally, you can go as high as this one right here being 250,000 bits. That's the one I recommend. So if it's off, you can always change it right here before you load it so that it matches your firmware. And there are a lot of other settings, but if I go into them, I'll be talking about it for way too long because I want to cover some other stuff. So I'm going to hit Control S to save, close out of here. I'm going to pop the drive out and hopefully not make a big accident on doing this. And then I'm going to go back over to the desktop. And people are starting to translate for me. Merci. Well, not merci. Yeah, that's thank you. Anyways, I'm sorry, I'm getting confused trying to think about two things at once here. So I'm going to pop this out, power it down. I'm going to pop out the drive. I'm going to place it in here, and the process should be the same for all of them. Now notice there's a little corner that's cut out, so this is notched so you can't put it in backwards. So there you go. Make sure it clicks in, and then I'm going to hold this up and hopefully not short it when I plug it in so you can see what's occurring. So it's going to load the firmware hopefully right away, which it didn't. That's awesome. So I've forgotten what this process is on this particular one, which is not a big deal because I can pull a different one. It says insert card. That's the issue. So this is the card. That's how you insert it. It might be I have a bad card reader. Card inserted. Awesome. So it's not loading, so I'm going to use a different one so you can see what's going on because this is terrible. I used to be able to upgrade these in my sleep, so it could also be that I have something set up wrong. So let's try a different board real quick. I'm going to have to swap this to a different configuration. So I'm going to place this in here and place it in the computer. And hopefully it'll fire up. Oh, doesn't fire up when you have the port off. Awesome. So here's the one I'm going to grab. I'm going to do the TFT 24. It's version 1.1. At least you'll get an idea of what's going on here. So I'm just going to disconnect this real quick. Plug it in here. Now it might have a different port name because sometimes they change them. So on this one you have 2 ports and they're not labeled really well. So you can see that it's 5 volts to reset here, and then this one says reset, and I don't know what it says there because apparently I can't read it. So if we were to plug into this one, it might not work. Let's try this real quick. Or it may work and I just don't know what I'm talking about. So it doesn't look like it's working. So I'll unplug it, plug it in the right one. I actually have a green marking here so I know which one it is. And now it's working. So now I have to fix the firmware real quick. So we'll go over to the computer and fix that hopefully in a jiffy. Otherwise, I've got to figure out what I'm doing wrong, like read the directions. So I'm going to delete this. And I know that another thing I'm doing wrong is this. So I'm going to send it over here. I guess it's a good thing I make mistakes. That might be why it wasn't working. Then I'm going to go over here and find my display, which is TFT 24 version 1.1. Right click, send it to the actual root of the drive, and then we'll try this again. Hopefully it won't be a mess. So back over on the workbench, I'm going to pop out the drive. Hopefully it'll show up. Obviously it's a brand new drive, so I'm not real certain what it does. Plug that in there. plug this in, and now it's working. So one of the issues might have been I forgot to copy a folder over. So as you can see now, it's pulling the actual fonts. And I'll check on the chat while this is running, because I know it's like watching paint dry. Let's see what we got here. See? Somebody already knew. Ed's telling me that I need to pull the folder over. And then card may be too big. That is a possibility. We also need to copy over the languages to the outer folder. That may be true as well, so we might get an error if I forgot to do something. But so far so good. But if it does fail, then I get to show you something else and how to reset it. So for those that don't know, we got a little bit of snow today, so half my day was a snow day. Essentially we got about 1.5 feet, I think. I haven't checked the totals, but it's over a foot, which is, what is that, 2.45 millimeters, or excuse me, centimeters in an inch. So a foot is 12 inches, so there's the math. So about 1/3 of a meter, maybe a little bit more. Okay, so it looks like it's now working. So essentially you can check what you've done by going to menu, and in this case we're going to have to go to settings, and I want to check the actual info. So this one's now current as of this year, being 2022. If we hit here again, we can check connections. Inside connections, we can check the S ports in this case. And apparently it says notifications, so I might be in the wrong place. So we'll go back and we'll see if we can figure out where this is. Settings. Might be in a different place than I thought, or it might not be on. I want to say it's in connections. It might be a reboot too. So this one's kind of strange. It might be based, oh, there it is. So there's the actual speed. So you can change it by clicking, I guess now on the pencil, which didn't exist. And you can click on different ones here. And then hit enter. Well, if it'll accept my finger. Apparently I can't get my finger in that little square. But the other way to change it is change the actual settings file, or the INI. So let's go over to the computer and see if we can set it up the other way as well. So let me get the view here. So if we're on the actual VS Code, I'm going to open this real quick and do this in an abbreviated fashion, hopefully, if I remember correctly. So we'll go to Downloads, Marlin 2.0, Marlin 2.0, select folder. We'll go over to Marlin, Source, Core, Boards.h. We'll search on Octopus. Now this is the 446 version. What I'm saying is, I'm sorry, it's the 446 is what this one is for the Pro, but there are two versions of chipsets. Sometimes referred to as CPU, sometimes referred to as MCU. And it's just basically a processor on the board, in this case a 32-bit processor, where you see STM32. But we're going to copy this. We're going to note that it was F446. We'll minimize this folder, source folder. We'll go to the configuration.h folder. We'll find motherboard just down here for the ramps. We'll replace that. We're going to have to set the first serial port to -1. Now the current speed we know is 250,000 bits by default, but we want to change it maybe. So we'll undo this. Whoops. And we'll undo this for comments. And I'm going to change this to 115 to 100. Because you can technically have 2 speeds. And this has to be, I think, 1. So we've got a second serial port, and it's set to this speed. So we're going to have to build this in a second, but I need to figure out for platform I/O the default environment. So we'll go over to the INI. We'll go and find our chipset, which is STM32F. We'll search on Octopus. And as you can see, there's a couple here. So we're going to search by chipset because what it says right here is that it's going to use the F446. So that's the one we need right here. So we'll copy that. We'll minimize this, go to the INI. We'll paste it right here. Then what we'll do is a clean, which is the little garbage can. Then we'll do a build, which is the check mark. So this might take a second, probably about 30 seconds. I'm working on getting the speed faster one of these days, but I haven't had a chance to sit down and think about it. But hopefully the next time I get to run this where it takes this long will be when I have a different chipset, and it'll take seconds. But that's a large initial investment. Okay, so this is almost done, or at least I'm telling you it's almost done, but based on that line right there, I think it's done. So we'll go to .pio, go to the folder, we'll find the bin, we'll right click, say reveal on File Explorer. We have to go back over to the desktop real quick here, power this down. We have to find the drive, which I put in the other one. Then we have to place it in our card reader. Place this in the computer. And then go back over to the desktop on the computer. Right click on the firmware.bin, send it to the USB. We can double check to make sure it's here. It's firmware.bin. This is the one that happened last night. So I'll pop this out. Go back over to the computer desktop. Drop that drive for a second. Put it in here. And let's see if we take care of the other issue. There might be 2 issues that we need to resolve, and I might need to use something. So no printer attached. We know there is one, so we'll go to Menu, Settings. Then we'll go to Connection. Then we'll go to S-Port. We'll click on the little pencil, hopefully. Let me see if I can get a better way to do this. There we go. Apparently my fingers are too thick. As you see, it's gone. So that's usually the most often seen issue, is no printer attached. And it has usually to do with the speed. So there's another thing I wanted to show you. So somebody on Discord or not Discord, on a GitHub for Big Tree Tech was seeing an issue. So let's go over to the website and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if I go over to here to Big Tree Tech, I was looking for any kind of issue relating to my power issue on my board, and that's the Octopus Pro. So what I did is I did this. I went to Octopus Pro, and they have a little cheat thing here. They can go to issues. If you click on that, you'll see a bunch of issues. So they talk about what they've come across as issues. I found this one. Obviously I made a comment on it, but essentially this person wanted to know how to do dual Y axes, or axes, excuse me. So if you go over to here, here's the issue. So inside of this, if we want to check the pins file, we have to understand what's occurring. So I'm going to go over to the source folder, then I'm going to go over to the pins folder, and inside the pins folder, we're going to find our processor, which is the STM32F4. Inside this folder, there's a bunch of different boards that use the same processor or similar processors. But what you're looking for in this case is the Octopus. Now you can see there's one called Common, then there's Octopus version 1.1, 1.0, and then there's the there's the Octopus Pro up here. So if we were to click on the Octopus version 1, you can see that there's only 2 pins modified, but it points to the Common. So it's appending these 2 pin changes onto this file when it's compiled using the include functionality. And this is known as a way, what's it called? It's called a compiler directive, I think. I might have the terminology wrong because it's been like 15 years. But it's saying to the compiler, go look here. Just like these are. You see how there's a hash mark in front of them? These are directives to the compiler. So if we go over here, you can see that there's regular defines with obviously the same thing, but it's swapping in the pins or the database of settings for your particular Marlin configuration. So these files may vary, but the Marlin file is basically static and then points to these for each board. That's why all my tutorials look the same. Essentially, I'm telling you how to point to things in this file and use them for configurations. So if we scroll down, we can find out what we might be seeing. So what I'm looking for is steppers. So you can see there's X step pin, then there's X dir pin, then there's enable pin, then there's XCS, which is chip select. So it's like a mailbox number on the outside of your house for your mailbox. You have a number at your address. That's the same concept. So it's pointing to PC4. And what this technically is in this case, I think is an end stop. So what he was saying was he can't get a second Y axis. So you see X, Y, then you see Z, then you see Z2. Now if you notice on the right hand side, they're putting a little comment here with these 2 forward slashes that are saying motor 0, then motor 1, then motor 2, motor 3, and so on and so forth. But essentially there's no Z, or excuse me, there's no Y2 like there was for Z. So one of the ways you can do it is you could probably put in Y right here to enable this, or you could get more creative or less creative depending upon how you look at it. You can go down here and say, okay, well, I'm not going to be using this last one down here for anything, so I'm going to call this Y2. And so note where the motor says it is, and that's motor 7. So I'm going to do Y2 again, Y2, Y2, and Y2. Now this might not work out with other settings. Once you get into advanced steppers, there might be issues. We'll find out if there are, but that's all you have to do there. Let's go down and search on the A4988. All we're doing is basically renaming something. So as you can see in here, they have a bunch of different steppers. So there is a Y2. So we're going to remove the comment for that. And so now we have Y2 and Y. We're not going to be using the Z in this case, but we could if we felt like it. It's just I don't want to show you that example right now. We're going to use the TMC 2208s, I hope, if I have them, which is this one right here. And I'm going to paste it for Y2. And I'm not going to use Y1 because we're assuming this works. So in this case, it's going to be which motor number? It's going to be motor number 7. So let's go over here to configuration advanced.h. I got to minimize some folders here because I can't find anything. So essentially all you're doing is saying reference it as Y2 in the pins file. So let's go to advanced configuration. We'll search on 800. And we'll find Y2 hopefully in here. So you have your Y, and then you have your Y2. So I'm going to leave everything default for this because we know that we're going to be hopefully using this. Hopefully this works because it doesn't look like it's enabled when we do this one. So if I were to go over here and I were to change this, I'll check on the chat in just a second. Let's see if anything changes over here. Okay. So that's really weird, but okay. So Y2 is right here. So let's see if that does the same thing. So Y2, super strange. Anyways, let's go back over here. We know it's motor 7, so that means we got to configure it correctly. So we're going to go over to the browser. In the browser, we're going to go back over to the Octopus. We're going to find the manual because I want to show you the right way to do it. Inside the manual, we'll scroll down and we'll find the steppers, hopefully. So essentially, we're talking about motor 7, which is here. So there may be some configuration involved. Hopefully I don't spark the board. Sorry I'm scrolling so fast. I'm trying to find a particular setting. Okay, so now we're in steppers. This is step dir or step direction. Then we have UART, which is the TMC 2208. And it's saying to jump this pin only. So let's double check that, make sure we're not looking at the wrong thing. Okay, so let's go back over to the desktop. Hopefully the camera doesn't blink out on us while I'm doing this. So I've got to take a dental pick in my case and pop these out. So I'm going to pull them all out first. And I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to keep poking at it until I do get it to work. So that's UART right there. So I got to find, remember the enable pin is in this upper left hand corner where my fingernail is. So let me find a stepper real quick. So I think I found one already. This one is a TMC 2208. So we have to verify where the enable pin is. I like how they say bottom, but they don't show you what you're looking for. But in this case, what we can look at is the red on one side and the black on the other to align this correctly. And we know that these pins up here are unpopulated. And I'll bring the camera back online. So as you can see, these pins correspond to there, so we know we're right. So all we have to do is slide this in. Make sure that's seated correctly. And then we're going to bring about a motor. Let me move some stuff around so I can show you. We're just going to use a regular motor for now that's on the bar. So we'll bring it over here. And I'll zoom out a little. Okay, so there we go. Let me get this so it doesn't slide very much. And I know that the video is horrible here. So let's see if I can get this a little bit better. And then this is going to be plugged in here. Now with the DuPont connectors, you can flip the direction. If it's going the wrong direction for you, you can always rotate it and put it in the other way. But in this case, I don't really care about that detail at the moment, but you may. So I'm going to move that over there and hopefully nothing will catch. So let me weight this down to make it safer. There we go. So the purpose of this is just to move this motor on here as the Y-axis. We do have to connect power. So I haven't marked these for power yet because the board is brand new. So we're going to have to check this. So what I like to do habit-wise is mark the actual pins, or excuse me, the terminals that have voltage in them. So I'll show you how I do that. So I'm going to go over to my desktop. I'm going to go back, go to the hardware file, go to pins, and we'll see if we can see it. So they don't show it super well, so I'm going to try and zoom in. But essentially you can see that it's got bad ground, voltage ground, I guess. And then, well, that's horrible, but I think that's voltage. But I can flip the board over to check as well, because it should be written on the board, and that's what you should always follow. But let's see if I can find a different one real quick. Let me zoom out so you can see this normal. Let's see. Don't know what this is. Okay, that's just dimensions. And this is super confusing for most of you. These are logic gates or circuits, so I'm going to skip that for now. Let's see if this is more illuminating. Of course, it takes forever to load. Okay, so this has got a lot of detail. So what we're looking for is right over in here. So you can see there's a plus. Let me zoom in. So you can see plus, minus. So that's your ground. Plus, ground. Then it's plus ground again. So let's mark these for the pluses. So I'm going to start from the top and I'll go back over the board. And essentially what I'm going to do is fill these in by color and hopefully not cause the board to implode, because if you hook these up backwards you will fry your board. So that's the second one from the top. Now if we look at the next one, which I'm looking at and you can't see, I'm doing it again here. Then I'm going to look at the next one, which says that it's 2 down as well. And then the final one, according to the diagram, which I'll bring up so you can see, is plus on top, which makes it super confusing, but that's bed out. So let's mark that one. So this way I don't accidentally cook my board, because for those of you who don't know, I've actually cooked boards live streaming. Well, one board, but I've cooked dozens of boards in my lifetime. And one of the reasons I do these tutorials is so you don't do the same thing I've done. So we're going to hook up power for the steppers. So this is ground, this is voltage. Tighten down the voltage. Tighten down the voltage. The first one was a ground. Now we have to do it again for the actual board logic. So this is also known, after you power this up, as a smoke test. In testing parlance, and what that means is if nothing goes wrong, you don't see smoke. But if something does go wrong, that's why they call it the smoke test. So that's all hooked up. We'll close this down for safety. Now I'm going to energize the system because it's been unplugged. But before I do that, in normal examples, I would take this jumper off, which is USB power. When I plug this in, you won't see anything here for power now. And then I'm going to plug this in, and it's going to provide board power, which then will allow us to use USB as well. So I'm going to plug this in. So far the smoke test is going good, or bad, or great. But we're going to pick this up, and we're going to look at it and see if we can move the axis. So essentially we're trying to move Y2. So we'll go to menu, we'll do the movement, we'll do move, and then we'll pick Y. Now it doesn't work because I missed a step. Well, I missed one of several steps possibly, but I'm pretty sure a lot of you are screaming it in the actual chat right now. So I'm gonna unplug this. I also didn't probably load the firmware. So I'm gonna pop this out. I'm going to then put this in here, and there's one other step I forgot to do inside the firmware, and I'll show you that now. So that's plugged in. Go over to the actual workbench on the computer. We'll go back over here. So the one thing I think I forgot to do was actually compile again. I may have done it already, but I forgot. But there's one other setting I need to change in advanced configuration. And I usually take it to the top and I search on dual. So we have dual steppers, and inside of here we have dual Y steppers. So I'm going to click here. We're not going to worry about the actual end stops, but you can invert the direction or do other things that I personally don't care about right now. So in theory, I have to set a number of steppers, I think, but maybe it's just for the Z steppers. So let's look around real quick here. I don't see anything saying set it, so let's try building it. This might not work. I'm going to clean first, and then I'm going to build it. And then I'll check on the chat because someone's probably telling me what the answer is before I get there. Let's see, you need to define Y as 2208. That way, in the advanced, it doesn't duplicate. Yes, I see what you're saying there. So that's a good point. I'll do that in just a second. So essentially, he's telling me to do this. It might be possible to do two different types of steppers, not recommended, but this is what he's probably talking about when you search on 800 to get there. You need to move this to the top. And I need to say Control F again. Okay, so that's why we didn't see that. Now we see this. Now there's a little mark there that I'm trying to figure out. Let's see, define microsteps. Oh, this is pointing to the value up here. Microsteps. So this is defined someplace. Why microsteps? Or maybe not. Let's see what's going on here. X microsteps. X microsteps. Okay, so it's Y microsteps. So these two things. Now the little giveaway is actually this. Shows you that. So it's pointing to this value. They're a shared variable. So Let's try rebuilding this again, and hopefully I won't have so many issues. And hopefully this will build. Now I'm going to grab some juice so I don't sound so cotton mouth. And for those that don't know it, the refrigerator is basically directly behind me. Okay, it looks like it built successfully, in theory. So we're going to go back up here. I'm going to minimize this so that I can see what I'm doing. Go to the build folder, go in here. And then I'm going to search for the firmware.bin. Reveal in File Explorer as usual. Right click, send to the D drive. Double check the D drive, that's the newest one. Pop the drive. Go back over to the desktop. Pop this in. Then we're going to power it with power this time and let the firmware load. We may have to reset this, but let's see what happens. That's a great sound. Let's see, it says all low. Now that may or may not be true, but I'll show you what's happening because I know what the mistake is. So essentially we said we're using multiple TMC drivers. So I'm going to show you in interface so you can see visually what's occurring, because a lot of people don't use it, but this is why it's important. So if we go over to the desktop, I got to find the port that this is connected to. So I'm going to first bring up Device Manager, which I know you can't see me typing, but I'm just doing the Run Device Manager. I'm going to go to ports, and it's port 15 in this case because no other port is connected. So over here I have a port 19 but no 15, so I'm going to put a 5 after the 1, and then I'm going to connect because I know the speed is 2500. I'll try it again, it's not working. So what I'll do is I'll go back over to the bench for a second, pull the power. This gives it a second to actually set things up. And now the G code might not be enabled, so I might not see this issue. So let's see what's going on. So let's see if I can connect now. And maybe I got the number wrong. So let's try this again. $15. Okay, it might be in use by something else. So I'm going to close this. Oh, I see what's going on. See this? This grabs your port whenever something is open. So let me close that. I'll reopen another copy of it. Unfortunately, I have to make these mistakes on purpose sometimes for you to see. But now the printer is now online. This might not work because I didn't enable it. It's M122. So it says they're all low. So you see how it says the X connection is low and the Y connection is low? Those aren't connected, but I enabled them in the firmware. So I'm going to disconnect. And I'm going to power down the board. So I'm pulling the power right now. Of course, you're hearing it slowly go insane, but it's powered off. Now, one of two scenarios, I can either put in these steppers and solve that problem, or I can disable them for now. So I'm going to go over to my desktop for a second and just do it the other way so you can see, because we're assuming they can work. So let's go over here and go to the advanced configuration. Well, actually we can go over here. So I'm just going to hit the slash mark to disable it. Whoop, not that one. I'm going to change this one back to the A4988. That way it won't look for that. And this one back to the A4988. And I know you should use the same steppers, but in this case, I just want to show you how to narrow down the problem. So I'm going to clean and I'm going to build. And then I'll check on the chat in 2 seconds. Let's see, you got Kerr running. Yep. Okay, let's see what happens. I'm gonna pop out the drive off camera on the motherboard and insert it to save some time. Granted, I didn't save enough. There we go. So, same as before. Build here. We're going to find this file, reveal in File Explorer. Notice the date and time. So we'll right click. We'll send it to the USB D drive. It's there, so we'll pop it out. We'll go back over to the workbench. Drop this in here. And then we'll power this up. And hopefully no smoke. So it's coming up. There's no beeps yet. It's connected. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Menu, Move, Move, and we're going to move the X. And it's not moving very well, so I'm going to increase it. So we got something wrong. So let's go over to Pronterface and see if there's something different going on. So inside Pronterface, we'll connect. And then we'll do an M122 again. And it looks like I'm going to have to match the steppers. So now you've seen that error. Let me power this down. Let's go over to the desktop. And this is a very iterative process because I don't know exactly what I'm doing yet, but the suggestion of making these the same looks like it's a valid one or a very good idea. So I'm going to paste it here. So now we're matched. Now I got to find a second one that matches that. So I'm going to go over to the desktop or workbench. And I'm going to pop out the jumpers. And I'm not going to connect a motor. So X, Y. For those that are leaving super chats, thank you very much. Obviously I can't see them while I'm doing this, but I'll see them later. It does help offset some of the costs of these tutorials. So that's there. Now to avoid the low message, we need a stepper. It doesn't care if this wiring is connected or not. So I need to find a stepper. I do have a... Whoop, I don't have the one I want. So let me see if I have another one. Let me pull that out. They might be in my other printer, so this is going to be fun. So in this case, I'm going to get creative. And I'm going to use a TMC 2225 if I can find it. Which is essentially the same as a TMC 22. v1.08, which I did find one. So this is what it looks like. It looks exactly the same. I'm going to place it right here, hoping that I do this correctly. And then we're going to fire this back up after I load the firmware. So I've got to rebuild that. So let's go back over to the workbench. We'll clean and we'll rebuild. And I'll pop out the drive while you're not looking. Obviously you can tell I didn't check how to do this before doing the stream on purpose. But this is generally how I think the problem out. I keep trying different things where I think about the problem in different ways. But obviously I make mistakes just like everybody else. Granted, I make less letting the smoke out because I've done it so many times that I've learned to try and not do it. But there are instances where it does happen. Okay, it's done building. Build folder, firmware.bin, reveal in File Explorer, right click, send to, double check that it made there. So let's pop this out and hopefully the camera doesn't go off on me. Plug this in here. Hopefully we won't get a low message. And then I'm going to plug in the power. And I get a low message. That's awesome. So why am I getting a low message? So I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to connect via Pronterface, I guess. So let's try that command again. Okay, it says the second Y is low. So now I'm going to have to show you how to troubleshoot this. So I'm going to power down the setup. I'm going to wait for the lights to go out. Remove this power. Pop this out because this is the working one. Pop out the broken one, or alleged broken one. Check the pins to make sure nothing's broken. There's no baked marks in there, but I'm going to place it in here. And the reason I'm doing this is because if the problem moves, I know that it might be the stepper. So that's my thought process. But let's also make sure I line this up correctly, which I did. So we'll plug this back in. We'll plug in the power again and make sure there's no smoke. We'll probably get the beeping noise. So it says all low. So let's go back over and reconnect. So disconnect, connect, and we'll click here. So as you can see, it's still giving us all low on Y2. Now originally when we looked at this, Y2 was low. Then we looked a little bit later and we didn't see it because we had it not enabled. So there might be an issue that we're causing, or I'm causing. So now that we know what that is, it might be that it's jumping over one connection port and we don't know which one that is. So this is what I think is occurring. So I'm going to disconnect. I'm going to power down the system. And many of you have heard me talk about this before with the dual Z steppers. It may be in a different spot. So we'll go over to the workbench and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if I go over to my computer and we go back to the pins file, what might be occurring is something that I didn't anticipate, and maybe they didn't tell me via the pins file, but we'll see if that's the case. So we'll go to configuration for the pins, and you know how they do 2 Z's right here, but then they don't do anything here. So this gets offset normally on the other ones, or pushed down to the next stepper, being E1. So I'm going to predict that it's E1 that they're talking about and see if that's where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to go back over to the desktop. Excuse me. I'm going to pop out this stepper, and I'll show you how I'm going to count this out. So it's X, Y, Z, Z2, E0, E1. So I'm guessing it's getting pushed here. I could be guessing wrong, which is possible because I've never done the Y. So we've got that out. I'm going to put the jumper on for UART. I'm going to take the stepper and place it right here. I'm going to plug this in so it actually works, if it works. Of course, I can't see, so I'm going to have to do this from the camera. So we're going to count backwards. 1, 2, 3. Let me just look. That looks correct. So we're going to re-energize the board in a second. So I'm going to take the power cord and plug it in. Hopefully we don't get a beeping noise, but that also could tell us we're right. No beeping noise. So there is no beeping noise. So let's try doing it via here. Menu, movement, move, Y. So no motion. So let's go back over to Pronterface. So inside Pronterface, try this again. It says online, we'll check. It says they're both okay. So I'm going to power this down for 2 seconds. Make sure that's centered, because it looks like that's what it was. It wasn't here, it was over here. But I also did label this one inside the pins file, so that could be the issue. So I'm going to plug this back in, and I'm going to see if I can move it in Pronterface. So I'm disconnect, reconnect. Let's try moving the Y-axis, which is right here. So it's not moving. So what we're going to do is we're going to fix the pins file, because that might be what I think is wrong. So I'm going to disconnect, and I'll check on the chat in just a second. I'm going to go over to the pins file. Inside the pins file, we can actually hit Control Z to fix this. So these are the changes I made. So I'll hit Control Z. We'll see if this actually builds by doing a clean and then build. And while that's going on, I'm going to disconnect the power from the board. And then I'll pop out the drive and pop it in. Hopefully I can beat the actual compile this time. So I guess the order of operation should be don't change this first. Or at least that's the theory. Because we know now that it's probably this one it's referencing. So let's go back and try this again. So source, we're going to minimize, pull our build up, firmware.bin, we'll right click, we'll go to reveal and file explorer, we'll right click again, we'll send it to the drive, check that it's there, then we'll go back over to the workbench, pop out the drive, hop in the drive, power the board, and then we'll try it via the front panel first, being the TFT. So menu, move, movement. We'll increase the movement to 10 millimeters, and then we'll move. So, turns out you don't have to modify the file for the pins file. Apparently they modified it for the Z-axis, which I don't understand, but this particular pin configuration is different from the other configuration. But at least now you can see that I can quasi problem solve. But essentially, I didn't know how to do that operation, and it just was give and take. Obviously, a lot of people in chat were helping. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are probably typing in capital letters right now. Yeah, keep it simple, stupid, or Kismith. Keep it simple, make it fun. But essentially, I had to show you that I was making mistakes so you could see what was going on. But essentially, they kind of made a mistake in the actual Marlin firmware. So I'll show you what I mean by this. Let me bring it back up on the desktop for the computer, and I'll show you why I got confused by how they do things. We already know excuse me, the pins file. If we go to source, pins, go to the chipset in question, down here we know that the common is here, and we know what they did in the case of Y2 or Z2, pardon me. But if you look at a different board like the SKR version 1.4, which is going to be in a different chipset. So I think it's up here, but I could be wrong. Nope. It's probably in the same folder and I went right by it. But we can also do the Pro, or excuse me, the different boards down here. So if we find the SKR Pro, we can look at the pins file. So in this case, they don't do a second Z, but they do use E1 in that case. So I know that one from past experience. The same thing is with the SKR version 1.4. So for some reason they came up with a new way of doing it for this board, which doesn't make sense and probably should be a bug. This should probably be E0 and it should count to E5 or E4, excuse me. But they may not agree with my logic because there might be a board design such as for the Veron that they're using that type of nomenclature, and that's probably why they did this. But that's just a guess in theory. But it's not the normal way they do it. So that's how you do the second Y axis, and that's also how you troubleshoot your steppers if there's an issue, so you can see if it's broken or that it's pointing to the wrong place. In this case, it was pointing to the wrong place to step. So let me check on the chat because I know a lot of people may have fallen asleep. But it's now, what, an hour and a half into this, and I've showed you two things. Hopefully they're helpful in understanding this board. But if you enjoyed the tutorial, let me know with the thumbs up. And I'm going to take a break, obviously, for tonight because I've been talking, and try and record a lot of tutorials tomorrow. For those that don't know, up on Patreon, I place tutorials that you can see and other information. So let me pull this up real quick. If I can spell Patreon. I've got to bring it up so I can see it in the way you would see it, hopefully. Let's see, page. Okay, so this is what Patreon looks like for people that are members. Down in here, you can see there's a bunch of posts that I made. Some stuff you won't be able to see right away, where I talk about different boards. That's all up on Patreon. So if you want an advanced look at something, it's probably up here. There's also other posts that I make regarding shortcuts, but they're Word files. And I might go into some special troubleshooting features like you saw tonight. But I did post something about the Big Tree Tech cheat sheet for boards and for the TFT displays. But this is also very helpful for you guys. Hopefully I can post more frequently now that work is calming down, at least for the next couple weeks. But for everybody that's still watching, thank you for taking the time to watch. Take care, be safe. If you're not vaccinated, get vaccinated, and please wear a mask until this hellscape is over. So everyone take care, and I'll catch up with you later.